Well, I think all the businesses I work with want to be part of a vibrant community, but they can't help themselves but try and control it and manage it, and therefore they generally do a bit of a bad job. But I think they increasingly see the value in doing it, or trying to be part of it. I think I was just chatting to a guy from British Telecom, BT, which has a certain perception, perhaps, of being quite conservative, and having people perceive it in a certain way. But then there's a chap I was talking to who's there's a guy called JP Ramaswamy, who is Group Chief Scientist, senior guy, who is very atypical for BT, and he's a blogger, and he's active on social media, and he's a thinker, and he's a visionary to some extent, and so in a small way he's shifting the perception of BT, and more importantly he's shifting the behaviour as well. And these things take time. I think I think the biggest shift is a mental one, or a cultural one. Sorry, I'm trying to remember the quote. In the 20th century, organisations were about managing conscripts, like in a military situation, whereas in the 21st century, it's about corralling volunteers. It's kind of mass volunteering. So people only come to work, and I think this is true in my case, and certainly the younger generation. They feel quite a disaffection, perhaps, with their organisation or what have you, and they need to be doing something that's meaningful to them, and whether that's playing in bands at the weekend or doing something in their work that's kind of personally fulfilling to them, as well as contributing to a kind of wider organisational goals. But and I actually think the biggest challenge around innovation is around within organisation. It's in the HR department. It's about culture. And it's about how do you pull together a loose network of volunteers, some of whom are on the payroll, some of whom aren't on the payroll. And so it's much more, it requires a great deal of subtlety and skill to hold all that together, especially with an organisation such as BT with, 100,000 people. That's a big task. And so Nesta, where I was before, has a venture capital fund, and so it's often said in venture capital world that you don't invest in the product, you invest in the team. However, when investors do their due diligence, so do their homework on their investment, they spend 99% of the time and money looking at the technology and making sure it works and making sure the patents are in place. And some of them spend a tiny fraction of the time doing psychometric testing or looking at the team. So the rhetoric between what they say is different to the reality of what they do and how they spend their money. And I think this is because we all like to think of ourselves as great judges of character, as being highly intuitive, and yeah, he's a good guy. And yes, I'm a big believer in trusting our instincts. Excuse me. I'm a big believer in trusting our instincts, but at the same time, we need to get smarter at finding good people and kind of motivating good people, and not just taking it for granted. So yeah, I think there's an interesting transition.